Okay, so we're solving one-step equations here again. This is our second in the video with one-step equations. It's something like this, 3x equals 12. Now you've done these before, but I just wanted to make sure that we were fully on top of these. Now, I'll do it the slow way first so we can see what's actually happening. Now it's 3x equals 12. You want to get x by itself, but it's this 3 times x which is in the way. Now to get rid of that, okay, so we're solving one-step equations. Again, this is our second video for solving one-step equations. It's just one step here, that's why they're called one-step equations. 3x equals 12 is our first example. Now this is something you're fairly familiar with, but I wanted to take it back to basics so you know what's happening. This will help you in the much more complicated questions. This says 3 times x equals 12. Now, in order to get rid of that 3 times x, because you want x to be by itself, to get rid of it, you're going to divide by 12 or by 3 on both sides. So it's going to be 3x equals 12, and you can divide the left and the right both by 3. Now that's going to end up being 3x divided by 3. Those 3's are going to cancel, which gives you x, and it's going to be 12 divided by 3, which is 4. Now, most of us, or some of us, will have started moving towards a level where we're doing something like this. 3x equals 12, and then you're saying, I need to get rid of that 3, so it's 3 times x. Take that 3 and move it to this side, put it on the bottom. X equals 12 over 3. Now you can see it's the same kind of question. We end up with the same answer, x equals 4. It's maybe just a slightly faster way of doing things. Now, key mistake that we're going to make here, just look at this question for a moment. Negative 2x equals 8. Now, with addition and subtraction, when you moved a whole term from the left to the right, it changed sign. That negative changes to a positive, but not in this case. When you do this, remember what you would actually be doing is dividing by negative 2 on both sides. So it's going to look like x equals 8 over negative 2. Negative 2 moves down. The sign does not change in multiplication and division. That gives you x equals negative 4. Okay, that's solving one-step equations, part 2, multiplication. Okay, so solving one-step equations, this is part 3. Now look at the question, something like this, x on 3 equals 5. Now this is x divided by 3. Now remember, when you're solving equations, you want to get x by itself. The thing that's stopping us is this 3. Now, going back to first principles, if you've got to divide by 3, the opposite of divide is multiply. So this is going to be x over 3 times 3 equals 5 times 3. Whatever you do to the left, you do to the right. Now those 3's are going to cancel each other out, and you're going to end up with x on the left-hand side and 5 times 3, which is 15. Now a lot of us should be moving to a stage now where when we see something like that, what we'll actually do, I'll just do another example here. X over 4 equals 8. You'll take that 4 and you'll move it from this side to this side, so it becomes x equals 8 times 4, x equals 32. Now again, be careful with signs. In multiplication and in division, when you move something from the left to the right, the sign does not change, it remains the same. If that was a negative 4, it would move here to be a negative 4 as well. Okay, so we're still solving one-step equations. This is part 4. We're looking at cross multiplication really quickly. Now, cross multiplication is a specific case where you have a fraction being equal to another fraction. Now, it's a shortcut way to do these things. Cross multiplication works in the following way. Draw yourself a couple of arrows diagonally. Now what that means is that each of these things can move along those arrows however you'd like them to. So negative 4 can move up there, 7 can move down there, x can move down, 5 can move up. It's up to you how you manipulate those things. This will help you a lot in some much more complicated questions later on. Now, looking at this, we want x to be by itself. So I can take this -4 down the bottom and move it up there to the other side. So we're going to end up with x equals 7. That -4 is going to move up and it's going to be a multiply. 7 times -4 all over, whatever was on the bottom, it's 5. 7 times -4 is -28 over 5. So x is equal to -28 over 5. That's cross multiplication. Draw your little arrows in there and you shouldn't have a whole lot of trouble with it. Okay, looking at one-step equations again, this is part 5. We're looking at squared. Now this is stuff you've done before. X squared is equal to 9. Now to get rid of a squared, what you would be doing is square rooting both sides. So it's going to be x squared equals 9 and then square root on both sides. Now the square root of x squared is just x. And the square root of 9, you need to be really careful. It's plus or minus the square root of 9. So there's actually two answers here. You've hit this before, plus or minus 3. So x is equal to +3 or -3. Now in practice, you guys are probably doing this a little faster. X squared equals 9. Now that squared moves from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. When it does, it becomes a square root. In the same way that a positive becomes a negative, the opposite of squared is square root. So it's going to be x equals the square root of 9 plus or minus x equals plus or minus 3. So there's our answer if you're getting rid of a squared. Okay, solve one-step equations part 6. We're looking at square roots. Now how do we get rid of this square root? The opposite of square root is squared, so we're going to square both sides. Squared, 4 squared. The square root of x squared is just x. 4 squared is 16. Now, again, in practice, you're going to do it a little bit quicker than that. Square root of x equals 4. Now, the opposite of square root is squared. So that square root is going to move from the left to the right, but when it does, it becomes squared. Okay, that's solving one-step equations, the square root, getting rid of a square root.